Good morning. Morning after night before. We're in Madrid. It's Monday. I'm joined by Michael Walker. We're covering still the Spanish elections. We didn't get the result we anticipated last night. All the polling in the last several weeks, several months really, had indicated a Partido Popular win, but that Podemos, new party of the left, would overtake the PSOE. Even an exit poll immediately preceding the results last night suggested as much. In the final analysis, however, that did not happen, did it? The PSOE remained larger than Podemos. They didn't make the breakthrough they anticipated.
Yep. I mean, there was a plan for this election. Podemos would finish, or Podemos Unidos, the confluence of Podemos and Izquierda Unida, would finish with more seats than PSOE. PSOE would have to make the choice, do we support the PP or do we support a Podemos government? They're not in that situation. We're in fact in exactly the same situation we were in 6 months ago.
Is that a surprise?
Yeah, I mean, compared to the polls, it's a surprise. Obviously, once we get the facts in, we start to explain them, and then we think, oh, we should have expected it all along.
So some people on my timeline yesterday, because I said, look, the PSOE finished second. They finished about 1 percentage point ahead of Podemos, I think something like 15, 16 seats, something like that, right? And some people were saying, well, Aaron, what happened to your pacification process? Doesn't seem to have been borne out in the facts. It has been borne out in the facts. The PSOE still lost seats. They still had their worst performance by seats since, I believe, the 70s. So a terrible night for the PSOE, but not as bad as we probably thought, right? What happened in regards to this alliance between Podemos and the IU, and was that the major factor in them failing to kick on?
That will be the big debate within Podemos at the moment. There was always the alliance with Izquierda Unida was always very controversial within Podemos. So you had one wing led by Errejón, the number 2 in Podemos, big fan of Leclau, who thought that this convergence with Izquierda Unida was always somewhat a just mistake. He's committed to Podemos being a transversal party, neither left nor right. So when Podemos allied with Izquierda Unida, we've seen a much more, even from Pablo Iglesias himself, communist imagery, heaping praise on the Spanish Communist Party, things that will make Errejón really cringe. At the same time, I think probably the alliance actually saved them from falling further down. I think we can see these elections as really a vote for the status quo. Citizens, their vote also fell down, and I imagine that if there hadn't been any kind of confluence, we would have actually seen a backward step for Podemos. So they've held up.
It's fair to say that obviously the last several years, they've never really had a setback. This is the first electoral setback, right? And it wasn't all that big. I mean, that's the best kind of gloss you could put on there.
They had small electoral setbacks, say like a year ago in regional elections in Catalonia, but they came back. I mean, they're in a solid position to take advantage of any new crisis of the state, any new crisis of the European economy. It doesn't seem like the moment where they're going to break through. Spain doesn't seem ready yet for a radical change. But when they do, it's going to be Podemos, the radical left, not a populist right who will be able to step in and pick up the pieces. So, to be honest, I feel more confident in Spain than I do in Britain, even though we haven't seen the result we necessarily wanted yesterday.
I'd say for me, 2 big takeaways. First one is Partido Popular, the centre-right party, gained 13, 14 seats yesterday. This has to be the most resilient major centre-right party in the Eurozone for sure, right? Secondly, and that's a huge achievement really on the behalf of the Partido Popular. Secondly, Podemos seems to have now the same problem that Labour has in England, in so much that it's limited to the young, it's limited to large urban areas. Meanwhile, the PSOE is still very strong in the south. Almost, you could say, analogous to the situation we're seeing in England with the splitting of the Labour Party base, right? People voting Labour, Green in London, in Bristol, big urban areas, but increasingly voting for, we know, the SNP in Scotland, of course, UKIP in parts of the north. Do you think there's something here we're seeing across Europe where the radical left, the new left since 2011, isn't really capable of scaling to the same constituencies that we saw with the historic parties of the centre-left, and that they're really parties of the indignant, of the young, of the urban salariat, basically?
Well, I've been asking a lot of people about this week because it's obviously very prescient for British people at the moment. In Spain, I remember a year ago when Podemos had worse elections than they fought in Andalusia, Errejón came on the TV and said they were asking why were the results not as good in Andalusia, in the south, more rural than you'd expect. And he said change always starts in the cities. I was thinking if a UK politician went on TV, Labour, they did well in the cities, but they did well in post-industrial places, and they said change always starts in the big cities, they'd get destroyed. I think in Spain they don't have exactly the same dynamic that we have in the UK, where you have a particularly post-industrial working class outside of the large metropolitan areas. So there's a greater hostility, a greater tension between a post-industrial working class, perhaps socially conservative, or a tendency towards social conservatism, and a liberal, seen to be elite. So I don't know if that's going to be the same crux that it's been in the UK. And I mean, if you look at Syriza, it does seem to make sense. You start off with your support in the cities, young people, people who were once organised politically, and then as the crisis intensifies, that appeal spreads out to areas of society, groups of society who are not necessarily going to be instantly inclined to vote for a new party, to vote for change.
Your conclusion, what lessons can the left in Britain take from, let's say, the mistakes of Podemos Unidos in the last couple of weeks?
I still think the lesson we can learn in Britain isn't one of mistakes, of what's gone wrong. So I think in this election is a disappointment. I think it's quite hard to read off what went wrong in this election. I really think that it was a situation of Spain wasn't ready for radical change. People were fatigued from elections 6 months ago, and there wasn't the momentum. I think it's difficult for us to say this election proves you shouldn't admit you're left. I think it's difficult to say this election proves the populist hypothesis doesn't work. I think actually the lesson for people in Britain is that Podemos was quite a success. In Spain, they took seriously the task of making themselves a potential party of government and appealing to a broad section of society. That means that if we do see an intensification of the crisis in Spain, it's going to be progressive forces that prevail. I think there's lessons to learn from Podemos as to what to do, not so much not what to do at this point.
Well, hopeful conclusion from Michael Walker. We've got a piece out on Navarro Wire right now. Go check that out, covering Spanish elections. I think really excellent analysis. We hope to see you again soon. Please subscribe to our YouTube channel and like us on Facebook. Bye.